How are you?
Pretty good. How about you?
Okay. I spent the afternoon as running around listening to all the other shows every other time you've been on. So I wouldn't ask the same questions, which I did in the prior. You know, every time you divulged that you were from the Berkshires, it was like, oh, really?
Yeah.
Even though I asked, I think, every...
Yeah.
But anyway. So I wanted to... I always intend to do that. And I was surprised by the last time you were on, which was at the New York Film Festival, 2017. So now going on
2 years.
2 years.
Yep.
How much we talked about Diane.
Yeah, because I had just shot it.
That's right.
So
yeah,
it was on my mind.
Understandably, yeah. And it was so cool to see it and then listen to a conversation with you when I had at a time where I hadn't seen it yet. Now to come back to it, it's kind of cool way to be able to keep coming back and talking in this way.
Yeah.
Well, I really enjoyed it.
That's the idea.
I mean, I had this bold opening kind of, plan. But how does it feel to have people seeing it? This highly personal film and very emotionally dramatic film. How does it feel that people are seeing this work? It's very different than anything you've ever done before.
Well, that was always the idea. I wanted as many people as possible to see it. I still do. But also,
I know that.
But I know.
But
I understand your question.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is that it's like, when you make a movie, I mean, if you and I were to sit here and we were to come up with a list of our favorite films, they would all be films that were made by people who did not hide. In other words, and this is something that David Fincher says in Hitchcock Truffaut, you cannot hide when you're making a movie. You may think you can, but you can't. And so you wind up, if you're going to do the work and really make the movie, there are a lot of movies made by people who do hide, literally and figuratively. And you can always tell.
Right. I can quote you because I listened to it this afternoon walking around. You said those films where they attempt to hide seem to always fail.
Yeah, they fail in the most important ways. Sometimes they succeed in other ways, but they fail really at the core. And the failure is thinking that one thing is going to stand in for for something else that's not there. In other words, that you didn't attempt because you were afraid to risk it. So the thing is that I think you have to just reveal yourself completely to a point where you don't normally. I mean, I don't normally in conversation, or at, meeting up with somebody at a restaurant or something like that, reveal myself to the extent that, I did every single minute that I was making this movie, writing it, rewriting it, casting it. It started with Mary Kay, so I didn't have to cast her. I mean, that's an old story, goes back a long way, but I just, talking about it through with her, rehearsing, getting on the set and shooting, and then, cutting it, and then mixing it, and then color correcting it, everything. You have to just respond to everything, and you have to have a complete response. It can't just be, that could be good. I mean, you have to respond with everything. And so I think it's all, in the documentaries that I made, I put everything of myself in those movies too, but it did not, because of the nature of the enterprise, there's a certain level at which, I'm still able to lurk in the shadows in a way that I can't with this. So, because they're documentaries, because they're other people's images that I'm working with, and I'm talking about other filmmakers, and in this instance, it's something different. I'm not, I'm very proud of the documentaries that I made, and I plan to make more, but, I just, it's a different kind of enterprise.
Yeah, if I had seen Diane not knowing it was you that made it, I just would not have thought, this is Kent Jones. And that is because whenever I, as somebody who asks questions and trying to get into inside, you have this opacity on a certain level. Mm-hmm. You know, you operate more from up here, and I'm pointing at my temples up here. It seems as though that may not be the case. Don't get me wrong. Like, I also know you were
not when I'm making a movie. I don't. But yeah, I get it.
No, I get it. I don't.
Yeah.
I'm only.
I understand.
I'm only access to a small part of your
exactly
world. You have 2 grown sons.
Yes.
You have a family. You know, there's much more to you. It just seems like, from my limited.
Yes, I understand.
You know,
what you're saying.
so and here is this movie then, which is just so full of emotion and this internal life, you know, that this character Mary Kay plays. It's just it's great, you know. It's and it's nice. I like how that happens. Then I could talk about that too with you. You know, like, hey. But we have that relationship with narrative or dramatic films that we don't have with documentaries.
Yes.
Typically.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
not Val Lewton documentaries.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've made films about people that I admire, but they made their films and I'm making mine. They're different. You know, I've learned a lot from watching Val Lewton's movies. I learned a lot from watching Hitchcock's movies. Particularly Hitchcock. His cinema is a great teacher, and so is he. Mm-hmm. But you know, I mean, the work of making a movie is to keep the flame. You find something that sparks you, keep that alive, and then at the same time allow everything that's happening to take on a life of its own. I think that the idea of, you know, directors who are sort of like perfectionists is misleading. Kubrick being the perfect example, and Kubrick is just a great, great artist, and if you really look closely at his movies, you are not seeing what the people who call him inhuman, you know, and a sadist, you know, I don't think people have done that recently, but they did, you know, when Clockwork Orange came out. And
how he runs his set.
Et
cetera,
well, how he runs his
that.
set is like another matter, you know, but it's just like what I'm talking about is how he gets to, I mean, every single second of The Shining is emotionally alive. It just is. You know, it's the same thing in Eyes Wide Shut. You can debate certain things, but that's not the point. The point is he won in 2001 too. Every moment with those guys are not puppets in that movie. You know, that's something else that you're watching there. And so I think that it's the same with Hitchcock. The control is a means of is one track, but within the limits of that control, you're looking at something that's very much alive. That's why the thing about, you know, actors being cattle is just such a thing that it's a smokescreen that he cooked up. And so I think that goes for everything in movie making. It doesn't mean that you have to play fast and loose and that you don't prepare. You do, particularly when you only have 20 shooting days. You make sure that you're prepared and that you have everything squared away. But within the framework of the shot list and, you know, the production design and the costume design and what you've worked out with the DP, and all that stuff, and you then give yourself the space for something to come alive.
That those filmmakers have played such a significant role in your life, like obviously Hitchcock. Is it the experience that you have as a director that you have had these 40, 50 years of film watching? I'm not starting in the crib, you know. It's
true.
But and then you get onto the set, and now you let that go. Now I have all that behind me. It's all there. And now I'm making my own film. Or right. Do you see when you're watching it? Do you see, oh my goodness, this has inspired me in this way as a filmmaker? Like you can see a direct link.
They're different. No, I was not inspired
Yeah.
There are different ways of answering the question. On the one hand, no, I was not inspired by other movies, particularly when I was working. I was just like making the movie. However, having a storehouse of memories, and I have a really good memory for little details and stuff like that. I just do, you know. So that's something useful, but it's useful only to the degree that it becomes a nuts and bolts matter, you know. So in other words, like when the DP and I got together, I said I want to call Jim Jarmusch and ask him what he did with Patterson with Fred Elms, because I want that kind of warmth. And we did, and that's precisely what we did. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we went ahead and, you know, did that. Or when it came to take a different kind of example, you know, when I was writing the scene where Donna dies, when Estelle Parsons gets up and hugs Mary Kay, that's not an homage, you know, that's a direct steal from the Magnificent Ambersons, you know, and she says she loved you, you know, but it's just that felt like the right thing to do, and, you know, I'm unashamed to say that it's a steal. On the other hand, there's things that are unconscious. After I'd made the movie and I watched a couple of Monty Hellman's films again, I realized how deep his work went for me.
Is that right?
Yeah. In a very subterranean, you know, in a way.
Ride the Whirlwind, or
any Tulane Blacktop, Ride in the Whirlwind, the shooting,
yeah.
and, you know, because of the pulse. That's and that's because that's in the cutting, you know, Monty's attention to the way that the movies move forward.
So Diane is driving around as somebody who feels compelled to fix everybody, and except for herself, of course, as most people like that do. And she's in the car, and we have her POV. There's a tension that happens in that car every time she's going around that road, and it also breaks up the film, you know, in a sense. But is what goes into a decision like that, for example?
Well, again, you know, you're talking about a limited number of days, and you're also talking about.
And it feels Iranian, by the way. They own that. I don't know if you had to pay for that.
Yeah, but you know something? I'll tell you something. Ben Kenigsberg wrote this thing about the movie in the Times at the time of Tribeca, and he mentioned Alain Resnais, and I was like, never thought of that. You know, that's I don't know. You know, I like Alain Resnais's movies, but I just didn't, you know, really think about it. And then as we were cutting and as I was looking at the film, I was thinking, gee, there was something in my mind that was a model, you know, for how the driving would work. Was it a Kiarostami movie? And I was like, I don't think so. You know, I mean, you know. And then it dawned on me that it was Alain Resnais's last movie, where based on another one based on the Ayckbourn play, where he cuts to driving, and then as the movie goes on, driving from one place to another becomes more than just driving from one place to another. But I really was not thinking of it.
No, I
just something that was in the back of my mind.
I didn't even think about it until I just brought it up. It was not like something that had. I just, you know.
No, it's interesting. And then I decided, okay, I did not have a desire to show her behind the wheel of the car all the time. I wanted to do it once. And I wanted to make it count. And I knew that the time to do it would be when she's driving to the woods.
And I know that a lot of the you mentioned before Estelle Parsons. We also have going back to our last conversation, Andrew Martin, and I'm just naming the most sort of common,
Joyce Van
recognized
Patten,
Joyce, the great Joyce Van Patten.
Lacy,
These women, this sort of coven of these older women. But there, you know, with that is this warmth and this nurturing. Place, you know.
They're tough and nurturing at the same time.
And that was your experience.
Yes,
as
it
you
was
related.
very much my experience.
That's when you were around.
I mean, that story that Estelle tells at the kitchen table is a story that my Aunt Mary told over and over.
You ripped yourself
off.
happened to
her.
You ripped yourself off too.
Well,
no, but in the best of ways. That's It's interesting. It's very different than John Ford's. Well, you know, if you look at How Green Was My Valley, it's similar. The table.
How Green Was My Valley.
How green? What did I say? Yeah, How Green Was My Valley.
It's you know, Jake Perlin asked me to do this dream double feature thing, and so at the Metrograph, and so I did it, and I wound up doing Rio Bravo and the shooting.
What did he ask for? A
dream double feature.
Dream double feature. Oh, I see, like an ideal, like a.
So the thing about Rio Bravo is that the movie, for me, is the way that the gestural music of the actors, but particularly when you're in that jailhouse and you've got John Wayne and Walter Brennan watching over Dean Martin and Ricky Nelson becomes involved. It's to me, it's in harmony with my experience of sitting around that kitchen table with my aunts and uncles. It's the same era, same kind of people coming out of the same era, the same way of moving and the same way of relating to each other and caring for each other. But I could have chosen How Green Was My Valley or The Best Years of Our Lives as well. It was, and so How Green Was My Valley is a film that I go back, I watch a lot, that I go back to frequently every time it devastates me. My son really loves that movie.
Really?
Yeah, my younger son.
Who's probably about 20 now, I guess.
He's 21, and he's in the movie. He comes to the
kitchen table. He's in How Green Was My Valley.
No. Yeah, he comes and bends down and gives everybody a kiss on the cheek at the kitchen table. My older son's in it, too.
In my intro, I can fill in, of course, people about the story itself. But what did Mary Kay, is that how she goes by? Mary Kay?
Yeah.
Okay, how did she, what did she make of the film when she saw it? What was her reaction?
She loved it. She was also she was extremely moved. And then the ending wasn't quite right. The initial voiceover wasn't what she's saying in her head at the moment that she dies. It wasn't quite there yet. And then we worked at that. And then when she saw the final version, she was like, okay, now I get it. And I don't know, she and I working together is that was just a great experience.
Yeah, to see it go to fruition, and that's what you had in your head. And who chose the music that she gets a little loaded in the bar one night? She has her own playlist.
I chose the Dylan song. She chose the Leon Russell song, and I love. She ran it by me, and I was just like, oh yeah. I mean, if we can get it, let's do it.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Well, Diane is in theaters on the 29th, right? March 29th?
On Friday.
In New York, at the IFC Center, obviously, and also up at BAM? At BAM. Yeah. IFC Center and at BAM here in New York. What about...
In LA at the New Art, and then it's opening in a lot of other theaters in different places.
As it should. Yeah.
After.
Very good. Yeah. Well, I recommend it to those. Congratulations.
Thanks, man.
It was a pleasure to see you again.
Thank you.